Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of MetaNews. We totally did not forget to record the intro, and this is just like my shit magically changing. So, yeah, that's nothing weird. And in this episode, we covered the EigenLayer drop, MCON and DAO Spring, the Octant, AO, the computer, Drake versus the Kendrick Lamar beef, campus protests and what it means, and last week in collapse. Maybe a few more bits. So yeah, promise we will try to keep it shorter in the future. But for now, this is it. Thank you for tuning in and hope you enjoy.
Right, so let's get into it. EigenLayer. So yeah, they just dropped their token recently, and there's like a lot of drama around that. I heard too. People were saying, "Oh, they didn't get enough" or whatever. I think it's all kind of useless. But the main
Yes. So what is the drama? Like, there's people are always talking shit with airdrops, and there's a lot of entitlement around with airdrop hunters. So like, oh, but I put these 2 cents in here. Why didn't I get tens of thousands of dollars? But there are also people saying that in these cases, like they're favoring VCs and whatnot. So
yeah,
I haven't really went deep into it. So I don't know what the fuck is going on.
I think like it's a bit too early to tell exactly, but there's obviously, people have PTSD and trauma over like projects just like selling out to VCs. And so there's always that kind of dilemma. But I think also, yeah, like these super early airdrop farmers are a bit entitled. Uh, I think, yeah, it's everyone wants to like, just have that oversized stake as a super early person. But, if you look at Optimism, for example, it's been much better for them not to do like one big airdrop, but kind of continuous airdrops over time, and not make it so much about like how early you are, but more about like how much you care about that and how much you help push it forward. Um, and so, I think airdrop farming is probably one of the biggest annoyances about the whole thing. And we, even in metagame, we've been kind of working on this sort of issue in terms of like source cred was all about like how to avoid that sort of thing when you're gonna like distribute or reward things to people. So yeah, I mean, I think it's it's fine for now. Like obviously, this community should still hold them accountable in terms of like not selling out to VCs and all that. But I think what they're doing is pretty huge in terms of just making ETH the ultimate asset. That like an asset that's squeezing the most juice out of that fruit. That is ETH, and so that's great in terms of people holding ETH. And I think that's a bigger picture that people should be thinking about. Is just like stack more ETH, and that's a kind of composable money and security layer for many different protocols. And but kind of segueing a bit too, I think it is a bit dangerous when you get into this like many layers of restaking. I think one layer of restaking is okay, where you take your self-staked validator ETH, put it into an eigenpod, and then reallocate that to provide security for whatever other projects. But then when you start to like do that over and over, I think it becomes like
Stacking it.
yeah, a house of cards. And
Yeah.
be in some sort of like Luna type situation, or I don't want to go down that road. So that's the main thing I would be cautious about. But I think again, people are kind of losing sight of the big picture instead and focusing on just this token. Yeah. All right. Should we move on to the next one?
All right. Yeah. Let's keep it
MCON
moving.
3. Nice. A Google search for MCON 3.
MCON 3, yeah, the Google MCON 3. Research it.
MCON products.
Recast concrete products. There we go. That's it.
Detroit. Let's go. But yes.
But no, there's an actual website. There is an actual website. Let me. Yeah.
MCON.fun.
Where are you?
There he is.
MCON.fun. There we go.
Let's go.
That makes more sense.
So MCON's back now in Detroit instead of Denver. Thank God. Too much Denver. We're overexposed to Denver.
Much.
I love Denver, but I think it'll be nice having it in Detroit, and it'll act as a nice filter as well for whoever thinks it's not cool to be in Detroit for MCON.
I think people are scared more so than thinking it's not cool, but we think it's cool.
There's humans living in Detroit right now, and they're okay. I think like it's always like the, purse clutching fear. It's like the same thing about like going to DevCon in Turkey. Right after like the war started, everyone was like freaking out. The same thing in DevCon in Japan, in Osaka. There was like tsunami things, and people started like taking early flights and leaving the country because there's a tsunami coming. Meanwhile, like I just looked at what the locals were doing, and everyone's just living life as usual because there's tsunamis all the time. And so, I think it's just overblown in terms of, we're gonna get mugged or whatever. But yeah, looks dope. I'm curious, like for me, MCON 1 was like goated, my favorite one. MCON 2 was good, it was bigger, but it was kind of a sign that like, okay, let's not go down this route of just making it bigger every time, because then we're just gonna become ETH Denver. And then MetaFest was my favorite as well, and that it wasn't really MCON, but it was MCON essentially, or like a replacement for MCON, and that was my favorite in terms of it's like something new in a different place with like different people, different format, different everything. Like I think that's how events should be, instead of but the content and the kind of general people and community is the same. So I think moving it around is a feature, not a bug, and it kind of creates I know it's difficult for coordination, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you guys pushing so hard to like take ownership and make that happen, so it always requires someone to be there and do that. And MCON 2, a lot of it EigenLayer was hustling that, and he is doing that for this too, so it's kind of just become EigenLayer's thing.
Yeah, MCON is more of a EigenLayer thing than MetaCartel. Like MetaCartel takes the credit, but it's really EigenLayer driving it.
Yeah.
And what was cool about MetaFest, I think it was like less than 200 people. It just felt really cozy out in Croatia, in the middle of nowhere. Like only the people who really wanted to come came.
Yeah. That was and I like too, it wasn't just like purely crypto people. Like a lot of the other things, like the focal point is crypto, but there, like it felt like the focal point was regen and like the meta crisis and all these things, which is something like greater than crypto, which again I think that's the focus should be on. It's like crypto's just like another tool in the tool belt. It's not any more like powerful or whatever than like the internet or social media or like all these other things that we have at our disposal now, and it's about how we like use them all together instead of just like one of it. So the theme was coordination, regeneration in the bigger picture. So like DAOs were a big part of it, but it was like combining it with this local regeneration. So we had people who were like doing actual on the ground work. And we had some of the, like the bigger picture thinkers, like Hansi Freinacht from the Meta Moderna. Yeah. And then like MCON is more focused on DAOs, which is also cool and more in the flavor of MetaCartel. Yeah. So it's interesting too, because there's going to be like a local art sort of festival or conference happening, or event or something. So that's going to be kind of the intersection where I'm gonna go for. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think like for me it's gonna be like the future of DAOs and all this stuff is gonna be like so much more about like local activations, for example, and like people doing stuff in their local communities, instead of just these like serially online autistic, like organization junkies like us, but all of us kind of relinking with the real world in our communities outside of crypto, and instilling that stuff and using it in that context. And a lot of like the network state stuff, like what Things Cabin is doing. You mentioned it too somewhere in, I think, one of the Telegram chats we're in, where you said you're like really just focused on stuff that's like local or in real life now, as much as possible. So Metacampus and Metacamp being like another sort of spin-off from Metacartel is like pretty cool too. I think that's another example of like the importance of like the in-person or in real life connections.
Right. Yeah, I think that's why I love that it's happening in Detroit, like where it's like this sort of town that's far beyond its high point during where it was during the automobile industry peak in the US. And yeah, now let's see what's the local scene these days and support them.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next topic. The DAO Spring, just gonna do a quick shill. So we did DAO December in December. We produced the DAO Playbook based on DAO December contents, where we had like 69 DAO veterans from across the space representing 80 plus DAOs or DAO tooling projects. And then now we're doing DAO Spring, which is the first DAO incubation/acceleration program. That's again going to have a bunch of these DAO veterans doing panels and workshops, helping people build DAOs, and having that DAO playbook as sort of a handbook on the side of the program, and really try to help people get started or make progress on their DAO. It's a 8-week program with one talk or panel, one workshop, and one challenge per week. We just did the week 2 session, so there's 6 more coming. It's not too late. Join us at daospring.org.
Very nice. I like the aesthetic.
Yeah, the spring. All right, so moving on. Join us at DAO Spring, but yeah, we gotta move on. So Octant. So Octant is another public goods funding program, and it's very cool. Like, it's the first really sustainable program where they are staking like 100,000 ETH or something, and then they're like each cycle. So every 3 months they are distributing these rewards, which is like a few hundred ETH. So it's a pretty high impact program, and it's fully sustainable. And the way it works is people buy these GLM tokens, which they stake, and then when the program is on, people are allocating these like the staked rewards to their favorite grants, and then they get matching based on the donations that they received. But the fucked up part that happened this time, so this is like the third cycle with the Octant, and what we've seen is that every cycle there's been more and more whales. So like the projects try to bring in their whales to stake GLM, and what happened this time is that like 2 hours before closing, a huge whale swooped in, and there's another part of the Octant where it's like, I'm not sure how exactly it works, but you need to be above a specific threshold of donations to even qualify to receive the matching. And so like there's like a third of the projects that don't receive anything at all. But then what happened when this whale swooped in and supported the 1 or 2 projects that they supported is that almost everybody else got dropped out. So it was a bit stressful for a lot of projects, I think. Like even the major projects like Givet and Gitcoin, who were like up there on the leaderboard, they just like got dropped. Rotkey, I think for a little bit there, even the Ethereum Magicians and the Protocol Guild, like pretty much everybody got disqualified
Damn.
for a little bit, and then other people, I guess, reallocated their rewards to support them. It's still a bit shitty because like the projects that got the second and third place, they got like 50 or 40 ETH respectively, I think, and they got it from the second place got it from 17 donators, while you had Give It who received 170 donations, and they were like last on the qualifications leaderboard, and they received 10 ETH. So yeah, we had this whale create a lot of waves in the program at the last minute, which is a bit, other people reallocated, so it was a bit amended. Metagame still didn't get anything. We were gonna get 30K, and then we didn't get anything.
Sheesh.
But that's fine. And then, so the org is going to have James from the Octant at their podcast next week, and they do their podcast live in Discord. So you see, they put in, ask their spicy tech question, and the spicy tech question is probably going to be, so how you plan on fixing these whales taking over the program? Because you see like 17 donors, and then you scroll down to Give It like 170, and yeah. You see like usually everybody, like all the top projects have over 100, and then this time you had these two projects who had like 17, and the other one had like, about the same. And you see Gitcoin didn't make it, and Funding the Commons didn't make it. A bunch of, most of them didn't make it in the end, but it was better than when the whale just swooped in and it just failed. So this is the previous epoch.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So they're going to implement quadratic voting as well. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And we still received
Surprised they
10
didn't have
ETH
it
in the
already
previous round. So
implemented.
that was great.
Nice. All right.
It's still a very cool program, and I have no doubt that they will address this problem. And it's like, it's only their third round, so you can't really hold anything against it.
For sure. They're still doing a lot of good, so haven't seen Nice Node. Let's check that out later. All right, shall we move on to AO?
Yep. Sounds good.
Did we talk about this last time? I don't remember. I remember talking about this kind of, but
I remember you talking about it, but I don't think we did it on the show.
Nice. Okay, so those of you who don't know, AO is a new project launched out of Arweave, and it's kind of a new way of thinking about decentralized compute and like blockchains. So it is basically, if you think of Ethereum, EVM, blockchain, it's like fixed block sizes. It's like a single threaded computer where there's a limit of how many transactions can go into a single block, and everyone is kind of competing for the same space, and it's priced in gas. AO is kind of completely different, where instead of like fitting transactions into blocks, you have agents passing messages to each other. So agents or processes. And instead of just, here's kind of the diagram there. Instead of like that competing for that one, each block, you create many different lanes. So it's like multiple threads, or like a multi-core processor, for example, where anyone can kind of create their own parallel compute process that can then send messages between any other process. And it's only made possible because of Arweave underneath, being able to permanently store the data. And then the compute essentially scales linearly with like the nodes that are running. So with Ethereum, for example, the more nodes you add, it doesn't actually increase the ability for the network to process more transactions. It just increases the security of the network. But in fact, the more nodes you add, the harder it is to process more transactions faster, because it creates a higher requirement of performance for each one of those nodes to be able to sync fast enough for that data to propagate around the globe. Because it's like physics, information can only travel so fast around the globe. So that's why things like Solana, for example, they are so fast, because not because it's like anything special on the software side. It's just a much higher minimum requirement for running your nodes, which means it's less decentralized in terms of not as easy to run a node, but those nodes are much more powerful and like better connected with each other, that they can process way more transactions. But even then, it's still kind of limited to a certain amount. With Arweave, it scales where the more nodes you add, the more you can compute. So it's very interesting because the language it uses too is Lua, which is the same language that you use in Roblox to build worlds and scripts and stuff in Roblox. And it's like a very popular scripting language, and even like getting to use it, like you open the blog post or the dev examples, and within like 5 minutes you already have it running on your computer and passing messages and stuff. So it's not, I don't think, competing with blockchains. Is kind of complementary, but it's going to be a huge part of decentralized computing, and the idea of having like agents that are interacting with each other and passing messages to each other. It's kind of like a new type of character class in this domain of decentralized compute, where you have like Ethereum for like as an EVM for like contracts and DeFi and all these sort of things, and you have like layer 2s and whatnot. But this is for the best, I guess, description I can kind of find with it is like somewhere in between like Urbit and Ceramic, where Ceramic and Arweave are kind of adjacent to each other, which is about data storage. And then Urbit is about kind of a singular program that can become like a decentralized personal computer and can interact with this like network of other processes or programs running. So this has got me kind of as excited as when I first learned about like Urbit and also learned about Ethereum. So recommend people check it out and dig into it.
How is it related to Arweave? I see the link itself says ao.arweave.com.
Yeah, so Arweave, each process is like a program that you write, and that process is stored on the Arweave network. So this is kind of like a compute layer on top of the Arweave network. And it wouldn't be possible to build something like this if it wasn't for the permanent storage guarantees of Arweave under the hood. So it's kind of like a layer on top of Arweave. Yeah.
All right. So, cool. All right, let's move on. I think we are again moving too slow, but we are moving faster than last time. So there's improvement. Balaji soft canceled. The reason he's soft canceled because like the guy has multiple times the fuck you money. Like you can't cancel a person like that. He just there's nothing you can do to the guy. But the drama came up. He posted a thread, or I don't know what was like. I think it started as a thread, but I'm not completely sure. Where he talked shit about the Democrats and talking about some kind of an ethnic cleansing of San Francisco. I don't know if this was like blown out of proportion. I know he was triggered because it was like some Democrat shit. And for those who don't know the background on that, is like the Democrats that are kind of keeping the San Francisco crappy, like because like the overall emphasis on freedom, like for example, that's allowing people to camp in the street and mug people and do all kinds of crazy shit and not get any punishment. Like if you go to YouTube and check out, like there's interviews with police officers and shit who like arrest these people and then just like let them walk freely despite what people do. So San Francisco is not doing great, and then this guy got triggered and started talking about ethnic cleansing. So
it's funny because
shit on both sides.
The way they, first of all, like here's the original headline they used. the tech baron seeking to ethnically cleanse San Francisco, which is just like a complete misquote of what he said. They changed it now. If you look at the article, the tech baron seeking to purge San Francisco of blues, and let's see, I want to find the actual tweet, but yeah, he was talking about himself getting ethnically cleansed out of San Francisco, as in like him leaving San Francisco. Nothing to do with like ethnic cleansing or anyone else. So it was just like a complete misquote, and then it blows up, and like, you know, but no one ever,
and people
like, hears
start
the
reacting
correction
to that
much.
and reacting to react.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen like there's just so much drama coming out, and people like quote tweeting each other,
Yeah.
and then you read the original, and it's like, that's not what he said.
Speaking of drama, we have Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef. Anyone who's following it, it's like, this is like kind of modern WWE. It's like you know, fake beef for entertainment, but it's interesting because it gets like pretty real sometimes too. But it's like it's kind of like, for me, a distraction, as these things usually are. But it was 2 days ago, Kendrick Lamar dropped this as his diss against Drake, and it was pretty brutal.
So they just doing it for the views.
Well, I mean, any rap beef is like that,
like
but it's
homies
like there's always a
behind the back.
discussion of like, you know, who's the greatest rapper of all time, and you know, according to charts, it's Drake, and so, you know, it kind of creates, now it's like kind of vying for the crown sort of thing. And in this track, like, Kendrick Lamar basically goes after Drake as, you know, being somewhat of a poser, you know, like going into like all this stuff about his past, how he's like an actor, you know, just kind of playing this character. And, you know, Drake himself, it's like, you know, he makes good music and all this stuff, but he has this like almost intentional character of someone who's like super like self-conscious, or like overcompensatory. So like Kendrick Lamar really just goes into that and exposes his you know, being fake or whatnot. But it's interesting because at the end of the day, it's like two completely different types of artists and flavors of whatever. So like Drake, it's like really popular, mainstream, kind of like club music, and then Kendrick Lamar is like music you listen to at home. And there's a line in here too where he says, I make music that electrifies them, your music pacifies them. And so, you know, at the same time too, like Kendrick Lamar's audience is like vast majority white. Like he's probably like one of the whitest fan bases of any rapper ever.
Oh, really?
So it's all kind of a LARP. Yeah. So the silly things people stay up to. This. How crazy is this?
What the actual fuck?
Yeah.
So it's like they're forbidding you to draw comparisons between contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis.
So
like,
yesterday,
what the
the
fuck?
House passes a new bill on anti-Semitism to expand the definition of anti-Semitism. So I actually looked into the bill. It's interesting. The bill itself doesn't mention Israel once, but it says that we want to adopt the definition of anti-Semitism from the it's called the Holocaust Remembrance. Let me find the exact thing that it's called. International Holocaust Remembrance something. IHRA definition. So this this list of things is actually like a screenshot from the IHRA's website on what their definition is, but it's it's crazy because what this bill is doing is essentially saying that uh, the legal definition of anti-Semitism in the United States should be defined by this external, like non-U.S. organization called the IHRA, uh, and they get to decide what anti-Semitism is, and therefore they get to decide what counts as hate speech or not, and therefore you can now it would be illegal to criticize Israel for having a policy similar to that of the Nazis, which is pretty much exactly what they are doing. And uh, it's kind of funny too that they put these points in there like that, because it's essentially like an admission of guilt, or these are the things that we don't want you to talk about.
Yeah.
So this for me, it's like it just shows their like level of desperation now with like everything happening in the campus protests. There's never ever been a time in history that like people have been this kind of tuned into and aware of like what's actually going on in Israel and Palestine. So the and if you look throughout history, students protesting have always been on the right side of history. If you look at protesting the Vietnam War, and protesting there's another thing too, and even like Columbia University, where this all kind of started, they on their website they pride themselves on how their students were the ones that set up these demonstrations and encampments and whatever against the Vietnam War, and were being shut down by police, and all these things. And if you look at how the protests are being portrayed in the media, it's basically everything against free speech, where people are like, oh, these protests need to be shut down. They're also being like characterized as violent protests and stuff like that, when in reality it's actually crazy impressive how disciplined the students are in terms of not giving any firepower to people trying to portray them in a negative way, where anyone who like, because you'll always have people even that come into the camp as like agitators, and they want to they start saying like anti-Semitic stuff to then make the students look bad, but they've been like very diligent about you're not allowed into the encampments unless someone else vouches for you. And anyone who does end up saying anything, they have literally like encampment officers that are like dedicated to just like finding those people and kicking them out right away. They've been kind of basically super, the whole idea of like, oh, they're damaging property, this and that, it's all made up. There's like literally like no evidence for it. And then the other night, I have to pull it up, but there was the counter protesters that came in and literally violently attacked the encampment. So like it was like a Zionist counter protest group that came in with like bear mace. They tried to like tear down the barricades, like hit people over the heads with planks. There's people like bleeding out of their heads, and all this stuff. And then you see the headlines. It's like violent clash breaks out at pro-Palestinian protests, not mentioning anything that it was the Zionist counter protesters that brought the violence there. But everyone's kind of seeing how blatantly like all of mainstream media is like misrepresenting what's going on, and it has a Streisand effect too, where people, by trying to like shut it down, like in Columbia, before this was just in Columbia University, and then when Columbia University like called in the police to arrest the protesters, who were actually, they were protesting in a designated protest zone in their university, like because Columbia University, they pride themselves on that, and so they had a dedicated like demonstration zone where the students were. So then they brought the police in to arrest those students there, and that's what caused like the much wider spread outrage where they arrested 30 students there, but then like hundreds came back, or hundreds more came in that campus and like many other campuses around the states. And they and in UCLA, they brought like multiple buses. They arrested 300 students in UCLA the other day, and then even more came back yesterday. So I'm trying to pull up the video here. Let's see. Yeah, this is just recent.
Well, consent.
Hold on, let me make sure you can hear this. So this is the craziest thing too about changing headlines.
Law enforcement officers to help after
So yeah, you can see what happened.
this is because this is beyond the pale. It is such an obvious,
So,
gross, not.
This is the LA Times article originally. UCLA cancels classes after counter-protesters violently attack pro-Palestinian camp. This is what actually happened, you know, like
against peaceful
even LA
demonstrators.
Times, it's like a very mainstream kind of establishment media outlet, but even they had to admit that this is what was happening.
Even the LA Times is not going to cover it with uncertainty.
And then
of course, other national.
You'll see later.
Of course, pro-Palestinian camp. Too. No, dude, are you
Literally, like while he was in the stream, he like refreshed the page and the headline changed to this: after violent protests at UCLA, UC president launches investigation into response. And so with all the constant programming of, oh, these terrorists supporting protesters, this and that, and you have a headline like this, it doesn't outright lie to you, but it, you know, people read that and assume that the violence was caused by the pro-Palestinian side.
Protesters.
And if you look at what they were actually
What
doing
about
in
this
some
guy?
of these
Let me
videos,
know.
like just like completely unprovoked, like throwing bear mace,
brave are
launching
these
fireworks at them.
Limp-dick, cowardly fascist thugs to beat on a single pro-Palestinian student that's trying to fix pro-Palestinian camp. There's
And
no
there's a really
uncertainty
funny
here.
and
Such an
sad. It's
obvious
not funny, but
action.
it's
They'll
like funny
say,
in
"Police
a
officers
dark way.
barricades at a pro-Palestinian."
There's a part here where like there's literally like a grandma, like probably like 60s or 70s year old, like old lady, like trying to hold her barricade in, and one of the like pro-Israeli guys said something like, you stand no chance, old lady. Like he was actually like, that came out of his mouth. He's like, doesn't realize he's like attacking an old lady.
NPC.
But yeah, you can see everyone there was coughing because of the bear
Turn on
mace
UCLA.
being sprayed.
You should cut it out, you know?
This is like, yeah, early on, like before
They're
the
coughing
thing fully
because
broke
they're
out.
bear
They're
macing
kind of
all-
being, you know, harassed and stuff. And yeah, there's all these like characters show up too. Like this guy's like a known neo-Nazi.
NPC, no place in this world.
Pussy.
And so like it's all the if you look at all the politicians, all the media, they always say, oh, these or you know, the university admins, they're always saying, oh, these protests are causing like Jewish students to fear for their safety, when in reality, like a huge amount of the protesters and a lot of the organizers of the protests are Jewish students, and the only ones that they fear for safety is like the pro-Israeli mobs, you know, attacking them and, you know, throwing tear gas and all this sort of stuff.
Yes, old lady. You stand no chance,
Yeah,
old
yeah,
lady.
it is.
As we're doing, we're just protecting the students.
See, so they're like pulling off these barricades.
There's a
That's the old lady right
old
there.
lady, pro-Palestinian old lady that they're trying to rip the fucking barricade off of.
Yeah, you stand no chance, old lady.
Yeah, like if you watch the videos, you see like where's the violence coming from. It's not people who are holding the barricade.
Yeah.
All right, and then the protests in Germany, are those the same?
Yeah, I mean,
About
so
the same thing, right?
it's actually spreading across the globe now. I've seen even universities in Japan, they have all these like demonstrations happening. But yeah, in Germany specifically, there was like in Germany specifically, they're like going super crazy. Like there was a pro-Palestinian conference. Or like a Palestinian rights conference, and as soon as the conference started, the whole conference building was like swarmed by German police, and like all the organizers were arrested and everything, purely just for like saying anything pro-Palestinian. Like pro-Palestinian is like actually illegal in Germany, to like even like join a pro-Palestinian rally or anything like that. So even just by people like sitting here, you know, wearing the kafia or like showing support for Palestine, there, you know, that gets counted as like anti-Semitism. And so because of the Holocaust, they're like overcompensating and like becoming Nazis the other way around, or just, you know, to another group of people.
Look at this shit, they're literally just sitting there.
Like, he was literally like, look at him. He's like beating at him.
Oh, Germany.
Like the wildest thing about all of this is like no one in crypto is talking about this, and you'd think like crypto people would be the one talking about this the most in terms of governments, you know, overreaching and, you know, suppressing free speech and all that. Like people who care about Tornado Cash devs being arrested and all that, they're, you know, seemingly completely quiet about this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we have our own drama, but it like all pales when you compare to all this real world drama.
yeah, and
Like complaining about the airdrop and shit.
it's crazy too, because like it gave a completely new meaning to demonstration for me, because they are literally demonstrating to everyone what the Palestinians are going through, because what's happening to them in these campuses is like an exact mirror of what, you know, Israel does in Palestine. And their whole policy is like they're trying to now do in the US to these students what, you know, Israel does, and they think they can just like replicate that same thing and it'll work. But it's, you know, just showing everyone or exposing you know, the reality of it. And I think it's a lot easier for a lot of Americans to kind of think of this as like a different problem far away in another place, and, you know, to not be able to even understand that experience of just living your whole life with like, you know, bombs raining down every day. So because it's like it's so far from anything they've experienced, they can't relate to it at all. But everything happening now, even though it's like not even a fraction of what the people in Palestine are going through, this is much closer to home and much more relatable to people, and they can see for themselves like what's happening, and in real time the whole government scrambling to provide cover for this other foreign state that's supposedly an ally but has not done actually nothing except cause the US to get into a lot of wars, you know, on their behalf. So you know, it's for me this like feels really like the beginning of the end in terms of this whole, you know, last 70 plus years of everything happening in Palestine. And I think, you know, the only path to true like freedom and peace for everyone in the world is when everyone in the world has their basic like human needs met. You know, the reason there is no peace is because you're trying to you know, expecting someone to be peaceful while you like gouge their eyes out. It's human nature to, you know, lash out against that. Any human being, if I'm trying to gouge
back.
your eyes out, you're gonna fight back or push back or bite back or do whatever you can to try to survive. So people, instead of realizing, or instead of blaming the person who's getting the eyes gouged out for fighting back, I think are starting to realize now that, okay, there's something like bigger happening here.
Yeah. All right, and then moving on to the semi-last item. Last week in Collapse, there hasn't been as much bad shit happening. Like, it's bad shit, but like when you compare to some of the other weeks.
It's like that dog meme with the
not
new
so
DAO G
horrible.
logo with the dog in the
It's
fire.
fine.
That logo is very good though. I like that. But yeah, so is this like a last week in Collapse? Is this like a meta crisis collection of stuff going on?
Pretty much like all the natural disasters and shit like that happening around the world. So like expecting the hottest summer in like 100 years and shit like that. Let's see what else is below.
Water shortage in Scotland. Wildfires in BC and Alberta. Yeah, so this is where I live. There's been wildfires increasing for the last many years. A few years ago, like in one of the main cities in my province, there was like a quarter of the city's houses burned down. I had some family there
shit.
too, and so like it was huge in terms of like it was like one of the biggest. It was like I think like $5 to $10 billion in damages or something. Yeah, it was super insane. Anchovies. Record temperatures in Africa and Namibia.
Floodings,
Foreign diseases and pets.
diseases. Oh, and more of these long COVID studies.
Yeah.
It's like what was the percentage that like almost 30% of COVID survivors that develop long COVID shit. So 25% experience brain fog and 75% some form of depression and anxiety. It doesn't say how long it lasts.
Yeah.
But yeah.
For me, like this
Not
sort of
great.
stuff is like one of the biggest signs that this is like an engineered thing. If it wasn't obvious already to people, being a result of gain of function research and viruses and testing how bad and crazy we can make these viruses. Because I've definitely felt like this sort of thing and seen it in people around me too who had COVID, which is pretty much everyone. And like another thing too I noticed is like when people get sick again, it's like I've seen a lot more people, they'll be mildly sick for like 3 weeks or 6 weeks or something. Like I've had that happen multiple times where I just have like one symptom or like a runny nose and like no other symptoms for 6 weeks. And so yeah, there's some weirdness going on for sure.
Brain fog and depression.
Yeah.
That's not good.
What's Octopus Farm?
And stop the octopus farm. Like everybody who's been a part of metagame or around metagame, they know we like our octopi.
Yes.
So let's stop the fucking farm from happening. Sign the petition. And like these fish farms are like, well, octopi are not fish, but these farms are like probably even worse than monoculture farming. Like I've seen some like wild salmon fishing where like they have these enclosures for salmon, and like these salmon are fucking riddled with disease, and they like sell them as wild salmon because I don't know how they managed to market them so falsely, but they did testing and it's like they're full of parasites because they just swim in circles and eat their own shit.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. Like it's not just like a moral imperative of stopping them, but like you don't want this shit in the stores. Like you don't want to buy this, you don't want to eat this.
Yeah.
And let's let's stop this shit from happening.
Especially for something like octopi, because like they're way more intelligent and aware than most other fish. You know, like with like
One
a
of the
lot of other
smartest
fish, they're
animals.
basically just like water vegetables, but even then, again with those, like the way that they do the farmed salmon and stuff, it's like not cool at all.
Yeah, but octopi are super smart. Like if octopi had mouths, they would probably speak.
Yeah,
Well, they have a mouth, but
to communicate in
not the
many
vocal
other
cords.
ways.
All right, and that's it. So you see, like how we have on crypto side, we have the airdrop drama, we have whales swaying votes, and then you like go down and down the list, and it's like all that shit feels so irrelevant.
Yeah, really is. But we all
So
kind of
I'm
create our
glad to
own
put it
little
together.
distractions to keep us comfortable.
Yeah, I mean my Twitter feed is all about that. Like my Twitter, not intentionally, but when I scroll down my Twitter, I see all the crypto shit, and I see the fucking EigenLayer drama. I see the Balaji drama and all of that. But yeah, so much more important shit happening. I need to clean up my feed, or maybe I don't because it will make me feel depressed.
No, I think like my feed's kind of evolved beyond a lot of crypto stuff, just because I've been like following a lot more of the stuff happening in like global geopolitics. And so it's kind of a really interesting time on Twitter, like because of the whole free speech thing. There's like a lot more stuff that's like you can see on Twitter that doesn't just like right away get censored. So that's been kind of eye-opening a bit and like nice to see. And I think like important too in a time like this. But yeah, at the same time, there's also a lot of like crazy stuff everywhere on Twitter.
Thank you all for listening, and see you next week.